And Alexander Larman, who's author of Lazarus, the Second Coming of David Bowie. Lovely to see you both this morning.
Morning.
We were just establishing, because I asked the obvious question, do you know one another? Because you both have history and knowledge of David Bowie, but you have not encountered one another before.
No, we were just saying that we formed this mini bromance over David Bowie.
Met in the green room.
Met in the green room just this morning.
Yeah.
And yet you both have such... I mean, maybe, John, first of all, you could explain to people, you know, your connection it goes back a very long way.
I've promoted his gigs and been his agent since 1978 and spent a lot of time together throughout the years, more so in the 90s when it got smaller and we were doing smaller events.
And tell us about first encounters, John, because this is when you first met was
1978 at Earl's Court, yeah.
First encounters, what was that?
I was in awe, absolutely in awe. I mean, I went to see, when I was on social committee at university, we got offered the Ziggy Stardust tour and the elder guys turned it down. I had to go and see him at Torquay Town Hall doing that show. It was just, he was the man, really, and to be involved with him was... you know, it was a privilege to get involved.
And did you immediately strike up a rapport with him? Because you were working with him for a very long time.
Yeah, he was a bloke from Bromley, you know, South London humour, and he had everything going with it. You know, he wasn't that alien that people talk about. He was a real bloke. He just had more creativity and foresight than we've all got. You know, he had more in his little toe than we've got together.
Alexander, your book doesn't go as early as 78. No. I think it starts later in almost the wilderness years of David Bowie, which you'll have to explain to people. Yeah. I mean, a lot of our team are much younger and don't really know much of David Bowie. A lot of people will remember him in the 70s, you know, and in, some would say, one of his peaks. Why did you pick this moment to start the book? Well,
what I always thought about was that Bowie had this amazing period in the 70s and 80s where he was this world-conquering rock star. And then what happened was he fell from grace. And I've always been interested, as an author, in exploring the life stories of people who have fallen from grace and then return. I thought to myself, if I started off in 1991 with a Tin Machine project, that I ended in 2016 with Black Star, his last album, and his death, it was a really compelling narrative.
And to be fair, he didn't fall from grace because of anything he did. It's just his music wasn't selling, it wasn't appealing. He was very experimental, for example.
And he was always pushing boundaries. But actually what's interesting now is if you listen to the albums he was making in the 90s, an album like Outside in 1995, we can now appreciate that album far more than you ever could at the time, because it sounds like something from the future. And that's what Bowie always did. He was like this man who came from the future to show us how things should be done. He was the original rock and roll messiah, after all.
Was he always, when you knew him, John, so curious and forward-looking?
He was always forward-looking. He didn't want to make Let's Dance 2. He wanted to do different things. You know, he did the Tin Machine project, which was a punk rock band, really. And, you know, he'd been a rock god, and he knew what that was all about. He could play stadiums. He wanted to try something different all the time. But if you look at his career, he did Labyrinth, he did the thing with Bing Crosby, he did a multitude of things that were different.
SpongeBob SquarePants.
Yeah.
I mean, I found that out in your book. I mean, his acting career was fabulous and so full of energy. It seems like he had quite a self-deprecating sense of humour as well. He wasn't too precious about himself, even though his thoughts were kind of forward-looking.
There was one moment in Tin Machine when we were doing some wet Wednesday in Wolverhampton Civic, and I went outside to look at the audience, and there were all these ladies queuing up to see David Bowie, the rock god, and I'd just seen the sound check, which was so loud it was unbearable. And as I walked in, David came off stage and he said, "What do you think?" And I said, "I think you should turn down." He said, "You're the only person that's told me to turn down before I've gone on." He just, you know, he was quick.
John, I know you're describing someone who is very friendly, you know, and very ordinary in a way and extraordinary in another. I'm always intrigued by the atmosphere someone creates when they walk in a room. Now, I suspect you must have been on many occasions where you've seen something happen when David Bowie walked in a room. Absolutely.
You would be facing away from the door and you knew he'd walked in behind you because there was an atmosphere in the room that changed.
I'm here, and 26 years later, he's proved to be absolutely correct.
In terms of when he decided enough was enough, one of the things you look at is when he met Iman, his wife, and that completely, according to the people you spoke to, completely changed his world. And he was determined that he would have a very different relationship in that family unit with his child than he had done before. And that influenced how much presence he had on stage, didn't it?
Well, I mean, there's basically 10 years that he left the public eye between having a heart attack on stage in 2004.
Which no one knew about at the time.
No one knew about. So in 2013, he returned with that brilliant album The Next Day. And, of course, the album was recorded in secrecy, which only Bowie could have pulled off. And so much of the time while I was writing the book, I kept thinking, only Bowie could have done this, only Bowie could have got away with this. And he really was unique.
John, there's so many wonderful stories. If you were to choose a song, maybe you do it yourself when you're driving sometimes. You pick a song to take you back to a time and place of his. Which one would it be?
Heroes is the greatest song of all time. I mean, people don't realise we've lived the second age of classical composers. You know, they were between 1750 and 1820. We've had Lennon-McCartney, Jagger Richards, U2, David. David was the Beethoven of our era. That's what it boils down to. He was special, and his music will last forever.
Alex, Alexander, the song you would go to?
I'd go for Life on Mars, because to me it's the ultimate David Bowie song.
Well, it's a good introduction.
Do you know what happens? I know when we talk about these things, lots of people go, do you know what, I'm just going to listen to it. I'm going to have a Bowie day. I'm going to listen to it all the time.
That's why this film is good, because it shows the real David. It's the closest someone has got to the personality of the individual.
Yeah.
John Giddings, Alexander Larman, both, thank you very, very much. Lazarus, The Second Coming of David Bowie, the book released last month. It's about the last 25 years of Bowie's life. And also, the film is on Channel 4 at this moment, can be streamed. Headlines coming up.